Hmm. The new year has come, and I cannot get my head around how to make videos, how to do models, and how to do YouTube. I think the start of this year it's took me an awful lot of effort to even consider even making these videos, to be honest with you. But here we are. For example, I build I built three of these, and on both occasions the exhaust slotted on quite nicely in between the rear arches without an issue. But see this one? Where the hole is on the model, there's like a wee knob on the exhaust, so it should slot in. But once you slot it in, you realise the exhaust is the wrong way around. So I might have the wrong one on one side, switch it over to the other. But I don't think it's that simple. I honestly just think that the bumps on the exhaust should be on the outside, as in shown, and then it fits. I think that we're starting a new year of no patience. Takes me an awful long time to build up, maybe a month. Doesn't help also I'm doing dry January. So Dave's not a happy guy. Just constantly thinking about brandy and cigars. And I ain't doing both at the minute, and it's hard out going. You just think of the struggles that I have, my hardships in life. I'm being sarcastic, like, I mean, think about what's going on in Ukraine, then measure your life. This is like a soft plaster, very spongy, but see, trying to get it to stick to a base that's very smooth, it's near impossible. You're best getting a bit of glue, mixing it in there. But while I'm doing this modelling, I've got earphones on and I'm listening to Stephen Fry talking about freedom of speech on trigonometry. Very good show. But I always find when I'm listening to these shows, they're harping on about freedom of speech being taken away by the left or by the right or by the centre or by the uppers and the downers. The reality is that you're not taking any freedom of speech away from the rich people, the upper classes, because they feel it's their right, that they have earned it. But I can tell you now, with my experiences living in Northern Ireland, or north of Ireland, whatever way you want to look at it, my wood glue is dried up, my super glue is dried up, the Tamiya glues are hardening, really peeved off Can't find brushes, can't find blades. I'm taking a bit of PVA and going to mix it in with the plaster because it really does get it to stick to a clean base. Now, if you want, you can take a blade to your wood, score it up, and it helps the plaster stick. But I find mixing it with a wee bit of PVA, if it is plastic or wood, it helps it stick. When it comes to the freedom of speech of people here, for instance, you've got politicians like Ian Paisley, Gerry Adams. They're just the two main ones that were thrust into the limelight due to their rhetoric. They're public speakers in positions of power, speaking out towards one side or the other, and they're allowed to speak freely. Besides the BBC putting an embargo on the voice of Gerry Adams, which was totally hilarious. They can speak openly, freely. And then the consequences that are, when I think about it now, back then you would have thought, oh my God, that's terrible. What they're saying or this, that, or the other. But today, when you look back, they weren't really saying anything that would constitute chopping their heads off. But during that period, there was lots of so-called bombings or black flag operations. And what they tended to do was allow these people to cause havoc. And then the small people were the ones that paid the price. The lower classes, working classes, unemployed, people that get set up and used for target practice. Literally, that's all there were. Newspaper headlines, people dying in the troubles. And if you look at it predominantly, it was young men. And the more and more you look into it, you realised they were set up targets. People that were taken out of society, surrounded, and then used and killed off. Now, what I mean by that is, say one of them is saying, they should go in and shoot, blah, blah, blah. They should go in and shoot up at bookies, and they should go in and shoot up at church, or even though it's bravado, you stuck a gun in their hand, they wouldn't do it. It's all bravado, show. Young men being young men. It was taken out of context if they were surrounded and they were set up targets to make it look like the conflict was ongoing. Then you had your black flag operations, the bombings that killed 100 people and 10 babies. That type of media fighting a war. And then young men being the targets, pincushions. But then the other time we have the likes of Pat Finucane, who was a solicitor doing his job, defending anyone. But he did defend paramilitary members, predominantly from a nationalist side. Then you had that MP coming on and saying that he believes the judicial system and solicitors were helping terrorists, and then several weeks later, Mr. Patfinuchin was shot dead. And then years later, Billy Stobie was the set-up target. He was shot for that, while the people that surrounded him, Mr. Barrett and others, were taken out of the country, given nice jobs in running pubs and clubs. So yeah, when it comes to freedom of speech, not many people could avail of it, especially people from the working class societies, lower classes. I watched a programme recently, it was called Say Nothing. I think it was 10 episodes. It was about Dolores Price and Marion Price, the two sisters who were involved in the London bombings. Brendan Hughes, John Lindsay. Yeah, and I was just gobsmacked that the hedonism of these people. It just came across as, so look at us, we're amazing, aren't we the best? And then they were saying to people that they deemed unworthy, informers. When you really look into it and read about it, I've read so many books on it, it's absolute bullshit. They were set up targets. Seamus Wright, John Lindsay. They were just braggadocios, and then they were sucked into this terrible situation, and then they end up in a car getting driven to a border. I was talking to a friend about it, and he said to me, the fear sitting in that back seat, knowing where you were going. And as I said to him, and let's get real about it, I think anybody in their right mind would have, I'd have took a seatbelt, knocked it around her neck and squeezed the life clean out of her. I suppose I'm trying to make this family friendly, but I wouldn't have been going to no border. I'd have been driving away with me in the car and nobody else. But anyway, at the end of it all, I was sitting going, there is no mention of the people that they were taking these so-called informers, but to me they're set-up targets, to the border. What about the people over the border that were receiving them? Who were they? If this is in the 70s, it has to be players from the south that were from the border region. So you just need to look at some of the ones that were arrested over the years. I suppose the guys working for Special Branch in the south, the Irish Republican up north, they wouldn't be lifted. Or the ones working for Commander Kitson, they wouldn't be lifted. But it really does ask more questions than it answers. When I look at that, the border, who were the people? But anyway, back to freedom of speech. So you have the likes of me, who say when he was 16 going on 17, states something in regards to the Enniskillen bombing. I remember having a conversation with friends at the time, well, so-called friends. General banter. Sitting there, a few pints or whatever, and I remember saying I come from the nationalist side of the equation, but my family is steeped in the British side. My father's side anyway. My grandfather died in World War II. He was on the HMS Hood, and he transferred off the Hood to the Valspar, the HMS Valspar, and the Hood was sank, I think it was a week later, with loss of so many men. I'm sure my granddad would have died then. But he transferred on the HMS Valspar, and when they were doing deliveries across Europe, and then they were going around Africa, I think it was, I can't remember the name of the place, it was maybe New Hope or something, or the Cape Hope. but I can't remember. It's been so long since I read the books and investigated it myself. I must do a video on it because I've saved a lot of notes and information that I got from the Home Office. Um, but he was sunk by the Thor cruiser. I can't remember the name offhand, but it was the Thor cruiser or Thor battleship. It had sank about 17 ships that day. And my granda was lost at sea. He got his name on a plaque in Plymouth, whoop-de-doo. But my granny then had to bring up her children. My daddy was 9 or 10 whenever he died, or my granda died. And so he grew up without a father, didn't really know him. But he used to tell me stories. I'll give you one story that really stuck with me. He says when he was shoveling coal on the coal boats, one of the supervisors who came down to talk to somebody, when he came down he had a mask on. And my daddy was just standing on a shovel, head on the top of the shaft. And he was just looking at him and thinking to himself, where's my mask? I'm here all the time. I'm here 8 hours a day, shoveling coal. And I'm sure all the other men, no, they didn't get masks. I suppose they didn't understand the whole health and safety. Well, if they did, they didn't tell the men. Or they didn't tell my dad. Now, as time went on, he says he kept losing jobs and stuff because he just felt he was being picked on, abused in some form or other. He married into a Catholic tradition. His grandfather came from the other side, as we would call it, married his mother, who was from the nationalist side, the Catholic side, and then a mixed marriage, and then my daddy and his children, or his brothers and sisters. Yeah, so he just felt as he grew up that either he was picked on by one side, and then the other side to see him as a son of a British soldier who died in the war. And he says from job to job he was getting into issues with people in general. So he found it hard to hold down job, and alcohol became his best friend. So he says he was stressed and anxiety throughout life. And when you're young, you don't think much of it, you just general banter with your dad and, you move on. But he died young, 69, but for the last 9 years of his life, he had emphysema, COPD of the lungs. So he suffered daily, right up to his last day. And we'd move, we were in Bangor. We could put out a Bangor. I think I was 5, 6. We had to leave our house. Somebody had bricked the windows. Protestant area. And then this was the early 70s, so things were starting to heat up. And then we moved to Belfast, to New Lodge, Hillman Street. They were throwing bricks and bottles over the windows, or over the back walls from the Dunkirk Gardens. And then we hadn't even got a toilet in the house, outside toilet. We had to get a bath and a sink, big ceramic sink. No heating. Really hard life. Suppose we had a roof over our head. Then from there to somewhere else, ended up having to leave there. People fighting with the family, other members in the street. Now, we were not by far bad people. We're just mum, dad, 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl. But trouble seemed to find us. I never understood it then, but I do now. And then, cut a long story short, onto me. Now, I didn't know it at the time, and I'm looking back. It took a good 20 years before I caught on. You know, you're a teenager, got expelled from school. You'll not believe what I got expelled for. Now, other people who threw their bags through windows, smashed a car, um, done damage throughout the school. Verbal warning, let their mummy know they're back again. I gave cheek back to a teacher who grabbed my report card and said, "You didn't get it signed," and threw it at my face. And I looked at him and went, "Excuse me, could you hand it to me?" And he might as well have told me to go myself. And then I walked away leaving it on the ground. He says, "Come up here and pick it up here." I'm not picking it up. You hand it to me where it can lie there. So 14 years of age, 13, 14 years of age, I had a wee bit of respect for myself. So I refused. I just sat in the chair and he kept going on and on. Then he grabbed me and trailed me outside and bounced me off the wall. Cut a long story short, I was expelled for giving cheek. And then they sent a letter to my mother's. Now, this was 6 months before my exams, which, according to a few teachers, I was going to do quite well. Science, English, lit, and all, you know, all your, and art. So they said they want an apology from me and signed by my mother. And my mother refused to do it. She went, "What? You told me exactly what happened." "Yeah, I did." She went up to school and said, "See, you and your apology, stick it up your bangle. It's the last time you'll see my son." Now, when I think back, that wasn't really good for me, was it? I want to go and do my exams. My mother's petulance just, no, she was raging. So, started work at 14 in the O'Connor's window glaze, or Connor's window glaze, window making place on the Antrim Road above the New Lodge. And I was making tea, brushing the floors, and just go on through the years and you think nothing of it. But I remember something distinctly that came to mind decades later. The Enniskillen bombing had happened, and I remember having a conversation. I think I was mentioning this, but got sidetracked again. Um, Talking to people, you're getting a few drinks or whatever. I remember saying, "Do you know what really bugged my dad? Was the fact that these people are dressing up in their orange order outfits, going to the cenotaph, laying the wreaths and paying respect." And my dad says, "Do you know something? I'd love to do that for my dad. I mean, I've no body to go visit. I've no gravestone, you know. The only gravestone that has any resemblance of his father is in Plymouth, and he can't get there because he can't afford a taxi, never mind a boat." But yeah, so I was telling people about this, and I was like, they're marching about the whole town to go to cenotaph, and they're marching in towns that they're not welcome, in areas they're not welcome, and it's causing issues with the people. I realised that they were using the victims of World War II to push political agendas. Quite young I was, but I did realise that. And then, with my freedom of speech, I think it was, I don't know if it was within days or a week, that was the bomb going off at the cenotaph. I remember being in shock at that. Shock, what the flipping hell were they targeting the cenotaph for? What? I mean, it just doesn't make sense. I know there was lots of military there, but the cenotaph? Will they pay respect to World War II dead? Excuse me? That's beyond the pale. So, as time went on, things that you would say were used. I don't know if there were black flag operations, as in they didn't happen. I suspect a lot of the 100 dead, 4 babies, were really just bullshit. And I realised that that bullshit was an agenda that was pushed by media, politicians, security services, paramilitaries, all acting in unison, targeting individuals that spoke out freely and used their free speech, causing incidents from it, and then killing them off at the end. Set up targets. Now, a lot of people automatically go, oh God, conspiracy theory time. Yeah, I had a lot of friends and family who used to think that too, but they've started to come around. The reason for it is the likes of Tommy Robinson or Stephen Yaxley. Whenever you read more into him and you watch this, what's happening to him, then you realise this is a tool by the governments. It's a tool used to silence people's freedom of speech. So if the likes of Tommy Robinson, the likes of myself, the likes of others beyond their classes, yeah, so the likes of Tommy Robinson and the small fry that's out there, the people that live within the communities affected by all the crap, and they use the media, law, the system, governments, paramilitaries, police services, intelligence services against you to silence you, then they're not allowed free speech because they're set up targets, and because they're being targeted, they're silenced using the complete mass control. 1984, it's here, and it's rife in Northern Ireland. So you just think of all the people that lost grandfathers, family during World War II to fight fascism, and the fascist is in charge now within the states of Northern Ireland. Thank you and bye. This has been a broadcast by Waffling Dave. Happy New Year, and more crying in the next video.